Even if I had known that I was going to go through psychosis, nothing could have prepared me for the onslaught of symptoms. I had a really mistaken view of psychosis before ever going through it. I had the stereotypical Hollywood news idea that psychosis was raving madmen in the street, shouting at the sky, talking to themselves. This was the tip of the iceberg. Psychosis is so much more than just talking to yourself. First of all, those symptoms that Hollywood tends to dramatize are positive symptoms, symptoms that are additions to reality. The first two symptoms I'll go over are positive and negative, and that is not to say that they are good and bad. There is nothing good about psychosis. That is to say that positive symptoms are an addition to reality and negative symptoms are a subtraction from reality. So those positive symptoms that you see in Hollywood are hallucinations, delusions, disorganized speech and thought, etc. And they are actually not the first symptoms a person experiences. They occur in the acute phase of psychosis, which is the second phase after the prodromal phase, i.e. the initial phase going into an episode. So you'd actually have these bigger, flashier symptoms after the psychosis has already been ongoing for quite a while. The symptoms that you see that are added onto reality, such as hallucinations, are distorted perceptions of reality, things that engage with your five senses, like believing that you are seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, or feeling things that are not there. Delusions would be fixed false beliefs, beliefs that are not true, despite any evidence to the contrary. A person will firmly believe them no matter what you tell them. Disorganized speech and thought, otherwise known as thought disorders, formal thought disorder, are a long list of ways that a person's thought and speech become disoriented. But then you have the negative symptoms, which are actually the first symptoms to present, and they can be a lot more subtle. These are the subtractions from reality, as I said, and these subtractions take form in the lack of ability a person would normally have. This is a marked decline in daily tasks or abilities that a person would normally function just fine. Things like losing motivation, losing pleasure in the things you love, not having much inclination to socialize, not taking care of yourself, difficulty with speaking, difficulty with your expression, having a flat affect of not showing much emotion. These lacks of ability are actually just as much psychosis as the hallucinations, delusions, and disorganized speech and thought that I mentioned before. Now, I was blown away just to learn about positive symptoms in the first place, because there are quite a few actually, like many, just in that type of symptoms alone. So when I found out there were negative symptoms, that really floored me. And it actually checked a lot of boxes and helped me to see where my psychosis had started, especially my first really severe episode where the prodromal phase lasted for months, and I could pinpoint back in college having no motivation or pleasure and distinctly identifying that in myself at the time. That was another really big mind-blowing thing to learn. And then, oh my God, it doesn't stop there, because I found out about cognitive symptoms. Cognitive symptoms are a beast, and I actually didn't find out about this for years, even after discovering the positive and negative symptoms and gaining an understanding of those and really feeling like I had understood what had happened to me. Whoa, cognitive symptoms are, like I said, a beast. These are symptoms that last long after psychosis ends. These are impairments of your cognitive ability that have really long lasting pervasive effects. And so to find out that not only had I gone through the loss and addition of aspects of my reality, but the decline of my mental state, it was a lot. A lot of people often get discouraged when talking about cognitive decline, cognitive impairments. It can feel very bleak to realize that there may be years ahead of you where you struggle with really typical things that used to come with ease to you. I struggled a lot with memory, reading comprehension, focus, attention, logic and reasoning. Trust me, I have made some very dumb decisions because I didn't really have the thought process to think that through, but it has gotten better. It's not a lost hope. There's a way that you can actively, consciously choose to repair your mind. Now, I can only speak for myself because I've found some great hacks over the years that I stumbled onto that have increased my cognitive ability and helped me to restore some of the function that was lost. I'm not saying that this is absolutely 100% effective for everyone. I'm just saying this is what's worked for me. And I want to take a more positive approach to an often discouraging subject. Cognitive symptoms are some of the most debilitating symptoms a person can have. And I know so many people who are discouraged that this is their life, maybe forever, when I have, found a positive twist that I'd like to share with you. So today, let's go into ways that you can improve your cognitive abilities and restore your mind. Before we get started, I would like to throw out a trigger warning to say that psychosis is in and of itself a sensitive subject that may at times be difficult to talk about. So if at any point during today's video I say anything that may be triggering or upsetting to you, you are more than welcome to leave. Also, a disclaimer to say that I am not a mental health care professional and I am in no way qualified to give any advice, medical, psychiatric, or otherwise. Who I am simply is a person living with serious mental illness who is here to share with you the wisdom and insight I've gleaned along my journey of mental health recovery. Now, before I get into the things that have helped me to improve my cognitive abilities, I just want to give you a starting point for where I began from, like where my cognitive abilities lied after my most severe psychotic episode, because the cognitive decline was the worst with that one. I couldn't think, literally couldn't think. I could look at a tree, know it was a tree, identify it, but not have language within myself. No internal monologue. I couldn't conceptualize anything or visualize anything. It was just a blank slate. I would look at things and I could have feelings and I would feel frustrated that I couldn't think. I was really exhausted by not being able to think and struggling to try to think, and I would try and there'd be nothing there. And I don't know if there were maybe times where that wasn't a problem, but for most of the time after I got medicated, after the symptoms had subsided, but before I was really stable, I would be in the car with my friend Kaylee. I've mentioned her a lot on my channel because she helped me so much. I'd be in the car with her and she'd ask me questions and I'd have nothing to say. I had nothing in my head. And so she'd ask me to tell her a story, and I love talking. We all know this. I wouldn't have a channel if I didn't love talking. I'm a chatterbox. My nickname in college was Chatterbox. I got the storytelling award when I was 9 at summer camp, okay? And I had nothing. She'd ask me for a story, and of everything that's happened in my life, of all of the fun little short stories I've written from my own imagination, I had nothing. And I would sit there very frustrated, trying to think, coming up short. And she'd say, that's okay. Maybe you'll have a story for me tomorrow. And she'd ask again and again and again until eventually I was able to think again. And it was maybe a couple months, but we got there. Building on top of that was struggling in conversation, not really being able to comprehend what people were saying. I had very stilted conversations. I couldn't really contribute a lot to a conversation. I think Alosia may have been part of this because I had very short answers. If I had answers, usually they were only yes or no answers. If I was in a conversation with multiple people, we were standing around, I don't know, at my friend's house and there were 3 people and then me, I would just stand there and just kind of be womp, 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 womp. I didn't really process what people were saying, could grasp pieces of it, didn't quite understand language. And I basically had to relearn how to read. I would just look at a page and I'd see letters and I could tell what the letters were, but comprehending what I was reading was impossible. And I could read a sentence, know the words in the sentence, and it would mean nothing to me. And I would try to digest what I was reading. It would come up short. It was like the same with the thoughts, where I'd be very frustrated because I would genuinely try and I'd come up short. And I actually had to basically force myself to relearn how to read, starting with like a couple sentences and then building upon that to a paragraph. It was years before I ever read a book again, and I still struggle with reading. I like reading, but I do it very selectively because it is really, to this day, kind of challenging to read anything and easily understand it. It does take effort still. Now, something to understand with these abilities is that they weren't just lost. Like, some things were at times lost. You know, the thinking at times was 100% absent, but a lot of times it was slow. Everything in me had slowed down. Reading was like a slower thing. I used to read very quick. I could read a book a day, and I often did. It takes me several days to read a book now. Even my favorite books that I've read before, I still take more time to read and sometimes have to reread paragraphs. Mind you, this is still something I'm working on. It's something I've improved upon, but that is just to say that, like, in conversations, when I'd want to speak, there'd be like a lag between what the person said and my mind processing it. So by the time I had something to say, the conversation had moved forward when I was trying to think, and I wanted to give an answer to my friend who asked if I wanted Chinese food. And first I had to ask myself, what is Chinese food? By the time I came up with an answer, we'd already decided on Thai. So these are just kind of the like how the processes played out, how they weren't just sometimes lost entirely. They usually were just completely slowed down from how I would normally think. Some of the long-term ones are attention. I've never really had a great attention span to begin with, but now it's like I'm the guy in Memento who has a 3-minute span of memory, and every scene is 3 minutes of his current memory span, and that's my attention span. And it's hard because I'm not trying to space out. I'm not trying to lose my focus. And I just end up in this blank fuzz in my head where I'm not even thinking. And then I snap back and realize, oh, wait, how much time has gone? A couple minutes I wasn't paying attention. And I'll be listening to my fiance in the car and he's talking. And then I suddenly realize, whoa, I didn't hear that entire story. Not trying to. And I'm sure, you know, a lot of these are really basic things. They apply to a lot of people, even who don't have psychosis. Some people don't even necessarily have cognitive impairments that cause this. They have other maybe disorders or just predispositions. I'm just saying that for me personally, this was unusual. And my memory. My memory is kind of something humorous to me today because I've learned to live with short-term memory loss and I can amuse myself by it. I used to have amazing memory, and when I was in college, people would say like, wow, it's like you have photographic memory. And I don't, but my memory was really, really clear up until my first very severe psychotic episode. And literally months before that happened, people would comment to me, it's incredible how you can remember such small details, like what that person was wearing and what the clouds looked like that day, because I could remember every single thing. Today, I get told stories about myself from my fiance. He'll tell me something I said 2 days before, and it is hilarious to me because I don't remember saying it, and it's like a really funny story about something that happened to someone else. I don't remember any of it. And so I've taken this approach now where if he tells me something that has happened, that I've done, that I've said, that he's told me, and I don't remember it, I just kind of listen as if it's a brand new story to me. that happened to a different person. Like it doesn't bother me as much as it used to, because I've learned to roll with the punches. All that being said, I now want to give you a peek into where my mind is at today. Today, my memory is still quite spotty. I don't really know if it's improved. I like to think it's improved. I, for a while, wasn't hearing stories about myself from my fiance like I normally would. But he did recently tell me one that blew my mind. And then like a couple times within the last day, I've heard a few more stories about myself. And I'm like, when did that happen? Did I really say that? So it's still a thing. It's just that I don't think it happens as frequently as it used to. I, of course, can't remember having bad memory. Like, I don't know the things that I forget, so I can't exactly quantify in my mind how much I've forgotten or how frequently. So I'm kind of gauging this off of how often John tells me things that I've said or done that I don't remember. And it hasn't happened as much. When we first started dating, especially when he first moved in with me, and this was maybe like 4 or 5 years, 5 years ago, we've been together a while, it was honestly constant. And because I hadn't really been in close proximity with people like that before, I had no idea I even had short-term memory loss. Like I kind of was aware that I had shit memory. I didn't realize it was literally memory loss until he pointed out to me how often this stuff was happening. So today I would say it has improved. I think. I can't trust my mind, but I think. The reading is a lot better. The reading is something I will go into further in a little bit, but do I have it over here? I don't know if I have any of the books that I've read recently, because I don't think I added them back to my bookshelf. This is my big book. This is my Alcoholics Anonymous big book. It is very hefty. And I sponsor people in AA. I've had about a dozen sponsees in 5 years. So I've read this book over a dozen times. I've read it personally for myself at least 5 times. We're going to get back into that later. I can read again. I can think again. I can write again. I can have conversations again. I've become quite more quick-witted, which I used to be. I've noticed through editing my videos that sometimes when I'm speaking, filming, and I take a pause, it feels like a really long gap in time for me trying to come up with a word. And when I edit, it's actually pretty seamless. It's not a very long pause at all. So my thinking has improved. My vocabulary has improved. I've got back the beautiful vocabulary I had before. I've been using fun words lately. I think recently I said pragmatic, and someone asked me to define that, and I realized, hey, my vocabulary is back because this is a word I have to explain. Pragmatic is, well, anyway. What else? My focus and attention are improved. Okay, I'm just gonna jump right into it. Let me tell you how I got here. There are like 3 or 4 ways that I've worked on my mind that I'm going to share with you now. And these are things that I actually just stumbled upon that I didn't really intend to like seek out. I wasn't trying to fix my brain when I fell into these areas of interest. This was just a crazy random happenstance that resulted in my mind improving. I didn't even notice the progress until someone pointed it out in my TikToks. After like a year of making TikToks, someone pointed out that my cognitive abilities had actually improved. And upon reviewing my videos, I realized, wow, I'm speaking more clearly. I'm more articulate. I have like weightier thoughts. And how did I get here? And it just came down to the nature of my videos, like the very practice of making videos and the subject of my videos is where it all started. My earliest videos on TikTok are mostly educational because I started getting a lot of questions asking, well, what's this thing? And what do you think of this? Like, what is that? How does that work? What is the cause of this? And I'd think, well, let me see. Go on Google, do a quick search, and discover whoa, like a huge, just gold mine of information. Psychosis is one of the most fascinating conditions I can think of because it is so multifaceted and involved. The symptoms branch off and off and off. You'll have like the 3 groups that I just talked about, and then multiple of each kind, and then multiple of each of those. And it's really crazy just how far-reaching even learning about the basics of psychosis is. And I would consider myself to just know the basics. I don't think I have like a terribly comprehensive understanding of psychosis because there's so much more to learn, and I'm constantly learning more. And I've had to kind of, I don't know, like take back things I've said because I've learned more that has disproven what I formerly believed. So the education is really where it all started. I learned about the negative symptoms. I learned that there even are negative symptoms. And after learning that category, I learned about avolition, anhedonia, asociality, flat affect, alogia, the 5 A's. I have other videos about that. Probably going to link them somewhere. And then learned about, specific delusions. I love learning about delusions. That's probably my favorite area of psychosis to learn about. I find delusions so much more fascinating than any other symptom, and I've mostly had delusions, so I can relate to most of them. That was remarkable. People say, oh, I hope I never stop learning. The day I stop learning is the day I die, like all of this stuff. And I never really cared much for that, but oh my God, it's so true. I hadn't been in school in like 10 years when I started making these videos. And so to jump back into education and to teach myself things, like a lot of things, it was the first thing that really started to improve upon the level of capacity I had, like first, like with my psychosis coming out of it, educating myself at all, learning new things at all, and memorizing, because memorization was the next really, really, really big thing. I actually scripted most of my early videos, the educational ones at least. I would read a minimum of 3 articles for every one video, and it would be like 3 articles about one small symptom. It would be like auditory hallucinations, and it would be like 3 to 10 articles. The most I think I ever used was 10. And I would cross-reference everything to make sure that everything was fact-checked. Like, I was very thorough with every single little tiny video. And I would write scripts. I would take my notes and then write them into scripts. And I would teach myself the same line over and over and over again for like 3 to 5 minutes. And then say like a sentence and continue from there. It would take forever to make a single video. It would be like the whole afternoon. But that strengthened my mind even more. And of course, what it takes to do that is to read. At that point in my life, I hated reading because it had been so difficult for so long. At that point specifically, I had willingly read 2 books in 7 years? Oofda. I used to love to read, and so to read only 2 books in 7 years, like willingly, it was really hard. It would take a really long time to finish the book, but articles, I didn't think that counted. That's not very long, except that I would be reading article after article after article, and they rack up and they rack up and they rack up, and they're all very sciencey, which is kind of boring. And so I'm holding my attention reading these. I'm building my reading comprehension skills. I'm cementing things to memory. And wouldn't you know that my memory improved, my reading improved, my memory must not be that good because I forgot the 3rd one, but nonetheless, these were the building blocks for improving my cognitive ability. These are some things that I've continued throughout the years, and I am continuing to see results. I used to think that there might be like some end goal to recovering these abilities because I guess I thought the goal was to get back to the place I was before psychosis, to my abilities that I had like pre-psychosis. But realistically, this is the long-term game for me now. I am realizing the importance of exercising your brain at all, cognitive impairments or not. everybody should probably try to do this. I mean, maybe not this specifically, but like Sudoku, crossword puzzles, like Jenga. Well, maybe not Jenga, but it's really important to practice your muscle, your brain. Like it's good in the long run to strengthen your mind. This is honestly something that I care a great deal about because dementia runs in my family, and these specific things, reading and puzzles, tend to decrease your risk of dementia. That is one reason I do this still. Also, wow, my mind is working so much better and I feel smart again. I not to toot my own horn, but I'm a fairly intelligent person. And after psychosis, my intelligence was shot and I wasn't nearly as intelligent as I used to be. And now I get to enjoy my mental faculties again. And I do feel like I'm intelligent and I don't struggle as much to grasp at words and form a sentence like I did before. And it's just really, really nice to have my mind back. And speaking of longevity, I just want to share with you the last skill that I've most recently picked up. And this is something that I discovered is really great for your brain in the long run. People who have this ability tend to age their mind better, like they keep their mind intact longer in life. They stay sharp. They aren't as senile or whatever. This is a really, really great skill. And I'm enjoying this new one. It's pretty relatively new to me. Learning languages. And, I think a lot of people are a little nervous to try learning a new language because it can be very daunting. And I think the idea is that you want to become fluent. And I've accepted I'm never going to be fluent in Spanish, but I'm enjoying learning so that I have enough to say with my coworker Maria at work. I really like Maria and she's one of my favorite people to work with, and she has just been like intermittently teaching me little bits of Spanish. Like she'll tell me like buen trabajo, which means good work, like when I'm helping her, and she appreciates my help. So I wanted to just learn how to say things to Maria. I just wanted to say like, I don't know, hola Maria, ¿cómo estás? And then she'd ask me how I am. I'd say muy bien or muy bueno. Like I'm not very good at it. And honestly, I shouldn't even embarrass myself by saying anything out loud. But I did start learning Spanish just to talk to Maria, just to have like any conversational tidbits to throw in there, and discovered that this is actually really good for my mind too. And it makes sense because I think there's something about people who are bilingual or like polylingual where they think more in depth, like their brains access information differently. And, I don't remember everything from that article I read, just that people who have like multiple languages that they've learned can like call upon things differently than people who only know one. It's healthier for your brain to know multiple languages. And I'm certainly never going to be fluent in Spanish, but this does give me some memories of the French I learned in middle and high school that I thought I would lose forever. And I've surprisingly retained a lot of it. So there is something to say for learning languages, what does stick, how much of it sticks, because it has been, 15 years since my last French class, and to this day, my go-to phrase that I promise you works in every situation is "Je ne comprends pas, je suis fatigué." And that means, I don't know, I'm tired. And let me tell you, it'll get you out of a lot of situations. I honestly feel like so fortunate that I've stumbled upon these life hacks, I guess you could call them. Like the things that I'm doing to restore my mind today are things that I actually enjoyed before psychosis that I lost, that I never thought I'd get back. And the thing is that it's just not something you dive into all at once. It's taken me years to build back these abilities because I've been doing the reading and the scripts on TikTok and memorizing and learning for years. So it's an ongoing effort. It's something I'll likely be continuing all the way throughout my life because now I just am really in it for the challenge. I like building upon the skills I already have. I like learning new skills like Spanish. But honestly, it's just something you got to tip your toe into the water with. Like, you got to start small. Nothing after Psychosis comes easy. So it's really a road to take gently. Don't expect too much out of yourself right away. Don't expect to completely regain everything overnight. It can take years. And a lot of people say this, that the cognitive symptoms take years to overcome. So this is a practice in being patient and gentle with yourself, but it absolutely can be done. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate it. Let me know in the comments if you have any cool hacks for improving your mental state, if you have any mind power tricks you'd like to share. I'd love to hear from you. And while you're at it, be sure to like and subscribe as well, and hit that bell for notifications to my future videos. I also have merch. There should be ads running below the video. And as always, I put out videos every Thursday/Friday. So if you want to see more, stay tuned. There's plenty coming soon. I'll see you all in the next one. Thanks. Bye. So close